Have you ever tried to use real rocks or boulders for decoration, theater props, or even photography props? Have you ever had difficulty finding suitable rocks for your task? There are numerous ways of creating them, such as formed concrete, sprayed foam, paper mache, and layered styrofoam. For time purposes, I'm only going to focus on two of them. The first one is going to be spray foam. There are supplies that are needed for this, such as a cheap bouncing ball, great stuff spray foam, newspaper, belt sander, primer, and stone colored spray paint. The second method is paper mache. For this particular style, there are a few supplies that will be relatively cheap. A small roll of 17 gauge wire, wire cutters, wire pliers, strips of newspaper, some flour, water, and salt. The salt will help prevent molding. There are some resources that can be found that will be helpful for the basics and some advanced techniques to improve the skills. 3 books I have listed here for sculpting foam, things that can be done to help improve skill as time progresses. The first one listed is titled Easy Sculpted Foam for Your Home by author Corrine Russell. The second would be Art Foam Sculpture, which is authored by Janice Wolfe, and Foam Decor, Carve 30 Elegant Foam Accents, written by Kristen McNeil. The easiest way to attempt this one is to lay down the newspaper sheets. You take the spray foam and spray down a circle. After you've done this, take the rubber ball and place it in the circle. After you've done this, take the foam and generously just spray, covering the foam ball or the ball over with the foam, and letting it go all over the place, all over the newspaper, just making a big mess. And sometimes this will take 2 cans of the spray foam. After this is done, it'll take a few hours for it to dry. Once it's dried, the quickest way to get it to look the way that it needs to look is to use a belt sander to shape it. Take the belt sander, knock off some of the roundness to it, knock off some of the shininess to it that the foam leaves behind on its outer coat. Take and put some edges on it, some flat spots, different things like that. And after this, take an air hose or a leaf blower or anything like that and blow the particles off, all the dust and stuff that's left over. Once this is done, it's time to take and prime it. Usually some gray primer will work just fine for this, so take it and just make sure every crack and crevice is coated pretty good with this primer. And once this is dried, I like to use a stone or granite colored, various colors as far as those go, dark ones, lighter ones, depending upon what I'm doing, in order to color it up to actually give it the real rock look. There are many different ways to learn the art of paper mache. There have been many books that's been written. There's many videos that can be looked up on YouTube and different sources. But for the time for this, I've opted to use a few books. One is by Jackie Hall, which is titled Paper Mache, or Paper Mache Art for You. The second book that I have is Paper Mache Design Advanced Techniques by Monique Roberts. Now, there are dozens upon dozens of other books that can be found for this particular ordeal, but it's a matter of choice as far as what's used and what's not used. Paper mache can be a little bit messy, but it can also be a lot of fun. The first thing I like to do, especially with this particular method, is take and cut the wire out, start twisting it together, and start framing out what's going to be, for this instance, a rock. So take long pieces and bend them around and twist them and get them. Take shorter pieces and bind them together, and it starts becoming sturdy. The more wire you put on it, the more pieces you put in there, the better you bind it, the stronger it's going to get. The next thing that's going to need to be done for this is to mix up the water, flour, and the salt. As I mentioned earlier, the salt's going to help keep mold from setting in. Once you get the exact mixture right on this, go ahead and take the strips of paper and start laying them down inside the mixture. You can take after just a few moments of being in there, and take them out and start laying them and draping them across the wire frame. Persistently take and put this on there and cover it over really well. Then after it's had a decent amount of time to dry, the next thing to do with this is to cover it with a primer. After the primer's had time to dry, then the main color can be done again. And as I said before, for the other one, I like to use stone colored paints. They're a little pricey, but they look nice in the end, and it gives it a more realistic texture to it on the outside. Now, just to close here, what I've done is I presented just a couple of methods on how to create fox rocks and boulders. I presented a brief how-to on the two that I opted to model for you today. A little time, a few materials, some enthusiasm can create most anything. Practice can bring it into a more desirable piece of art. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.